That's a band you don't hear very often on the radio these days. They had their time and they haven't released that many singles here in the UK, but the band is called One Republic. The song is called Stop and Stare. Put that with the first song that we played you after the 3 o'clock news this afternoon here on BBC Radio Northampton, and perhaps, just maybe, you'll get what is a fairly big global story. I say no more. We'll give you the answer in about half an hour's time. Now, earlier on this year, we started talking to a bunch of guys who are going under the name of the Northampton Knights karting team. The constant to all of that has been Luke Austin, who's been in on our programme I think this is the 4th time. James Fitchew has also been in the studio before. And these are guys that we sort of adopted on the programme to say, right, we want to see how you get on in what's called the Elite Karting League event. Now, we talked about karting in the recent past with the Formula Kart Stars series, which took place at Wilton Mill just a few weeks ago. They put on a great show. Wilton Mill is going to be the venue for the next round of the Elite Karting League event, and it means that Luke and James and the team will have an opportunity to shine. What's more, as people in the motorsport business, they've got an opportunity to shine in front of their first ever sponsor, and we'll come on to that in a moment or two. First, they're in the studio. Before we get into karting, I've got to ask you this question because it is a breaking story today. Michael Schumacher has announced his retirement from Formula One. Luke, James, welcome back to the studio. Luke, as somebody who works in Formula One, and you do, what's your reaction to the news that the multiple world champion and the guy who's got such a reputation has decided that's it, he's going to hang up his helmet from Formula One at least?
Well, it's obviously quite disappointing because it's a major part of the sport, like having Michael Schumacher in it, because he's the 7-time world champion. He's the biggest driver known to the sport. And it won't be the same not having him on the grid, but we had a few seasons without him before, so I'm sure it'll be all right. The sport will carry on. Has
there been any talk within the ranks about the potential of Schumacher going and what it might do to Formula One? Because as he goes, it gives somebody else an opportunity to come in.
I haven't personally heard anything, but obviously it'll give the young guys a chance to come in and open up a space for them to show what they can do.
Well, we'll see where that goes in the future. James, from your point of view, I mean, the man has a towering reputation. He's done a tremendous amount for Formula One, associated as he was with Ferrari. What do you think for the future for him? Should he hang up his race suits altogether, or perhaps go into some other form of racing instead?
I think he should personally go into managing other drivers to get them to where he was at one point. I think he's got to his age now.
He's got all the connections, hasn't he?
Exactly. Yeah, he's got the knowledge. Pass it on.
All right, well, we'll see what happens, of course, with the departure of Michael Schumacher. It's going to be the arrival of Lewis Hamilton at Brackley for the Mercedes Formula One team based in Brackley, so that's good news for Northamptonshire. It's good news for the guys up at Brixworth as well when it comes to building Mercedes car engines and motorsport engines, so we'll see about that in due course. Now, your kind of racing is slightly different. We're talking about the Elite Karting League, but anybody who's in Formula One these days tends to have started out in kart racing. We talked about Formula Kart Stars not so long ago. For people that haven't heard the two of you on the programme before, just give me some idea about the machines that you drive and just how competitive elite karting is when it gets onto the tracks of the UK.
Well, the Elite Karting League's just similar. It's like Pro Kart, so it's general corporate kart that you'd race, so you went down to your local circuit. All the karts are exactly the same for everyone in the series, so it's all fully down to the driver themselves to put themselves at the front and get out and win.
So it's very competitive, very close racing, identical karts. Bit of a difference with Formula One, though, because you have 2 engines instead of 1.
Well, yeah, we do have 2 engines. Sadly, they're not quite as powerful as an F1 engine. It'd be great if they were, but it still puts out a good bit of performance.
All right, now you're going to be racing locally. This is your home event, as it were, on what is a series through the course of the year, and Wilton Mill is going to be the venue, so lots and lots of people being encouraged to come and see you race. How's the season been so far? How are you doing within the rankings? Because there are lots and lots of people who are drivers within teams and teams within the elite karting scheme itself. Tell us how you've been getting on, James.
Well, from the beginning of the season, those tracks we've not been to before, so it's a case of getting there on a Saturday, doing a lot of practicing and getting to know the circuit, the karts. But as we've progressed through the season, we've got a lot better with the karts, with understanding the karts, and now finally we've come to a circuit that we all know. We've all done thousands of laps around this track, and this is going to be the one.
Let nobody be under any mistake about what Wilton Mill is like, by the way. There is a Formula One driver who keeps his own kart there, and I know he races or runs around at least 2 or 3 times a week just for his basic fitness. You might actually see him if he gets up at the weekend. I'm not saying that he's not going to be there. It's possible that he's going to be watching what's going on in the Japanese Grand Prix this weekend instead, but you never know. If you turn up to Wilton Mill, you might find a star of Formula One whipping around the circuit as well, and he's a very personable and easygoing guy as well. Luke, it's been not a bad season for you. You're into certainly the top half of the teams. In fact, you're right up towards the top. And that, I gather, has been a challenge that has been set you by your first sponsor. Now, Formula One is all about money. Motorsport is all about money, at some level at least. What does it mean to you to get a corporate organisation in the form of Northampton Waste Control backing you as a bunch of mates doing kart racing, but clearly doing it with a professional sense of mind, professional head in terms of what you're doing? When you get a sponsor involved, it gets a bit serious, doesn't it?
Yeah, it gets a bit serious, but obviously now we're going to go down to the race and we need to perform to impress them. But the main thing about having the sponsor behind us means we can go to tracks, we can practice a lot more, and then we can get our way up the grid a lot easier because we've got the practice behind us and we're able to improve as drivers.
So is this a true case of money talks then?
That's generally the situation with motorsport. So if you've got more money, you can get a bit more practice in.
Now, I've been told that if you raise your game to a certain level, James, not only have you got a sponsor for the rest of this season, but they will talk to you about sponsoring you and backing you for next season. So already you're starting to look at planning for 2013 rather than 2012.
Yes, currently we're sitting in 8th in the championship, and we're only like 2.5 points behind 4th. And so our sponsor, we sat down and had a chat yesterday with them. And they've given us like a challenge of getting to 4th. If we do, we'll get sponsorship for the rest of the next year.
So the carrot is there. Did you say just 2.5 points separates you from 4th position?
Yeah. Their point system is a bit odd, but it's workable. And going by what we've worked out with this race coming up, and we've got a double header at Teesside, we should certainly be on it.
So it's realistic. It is achievable.
Without a doubt.
Okay, so it's getting together. I mean, I'm fascinated by this sort of sponsor and racer aspect to things, because when you're racing for yourselves, okay, you're self-funded, you've got to go and get the money together. That's going to be a certain limit to the amount of testing and preparation, all the rest of it that you can do. If somebody else is going to effectively bankroll part, if not all, of the team, that takes some of the financial pressure, some of the administrative pressure off you. Does it really make a difference in terms of the way you're able to drive and to improve your performance as a result?
Well, it relieves some of the strain, so we don't have to worry too much about having the time to go work and get the extra money to get racing. So obviously, even though the EKL is a cheap championship,
relatively speaking,
relatively cheap, we have to go out, work extra weekends at other places and get a bit extra money in, so we can afford every round and afford the extra practice that we need to get to.
And for you personally, I know, Luke, that you've had a good season. Both of you race in different formulae as well as karts. We'll limit this to karting for the time being. You're right up there within the top 10% of well over nearly 200 drivers, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's 170 drivers in the championship. I'm currently sat 13th. Sadly, I had a really bad first round where I got a DNF because the kart broke, so that sort of knocked me back a little bit.
Blaming on the equipment, you see. Didn't work. The kart broke underneath me. You're starting to sound like Schumacher already, actually. So you're into the top 10% in that case. If you hadn't had that unfortunate start to the season, where do you think you could be right now? If you are 2.5 points away from 4th and the team is now 8th, where could you be as a solo driver?
I reckon I could easily be inside the top 10, if not the top 5. After the first round, I was down in, I think, 77th, so I've worked my way up quite a lot since then.
So is it very frustrating that at the start of the season things didn't quite go to plan?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Knowing the performance I've put in since then, it's
if only. When it comes to a race meeting, it's more than just the two of you as the team. How many of you are there in the team on the track? And equally, how many people do you turn up to each circuit with? Because I'm assuming that you do your own maintenance and you do your own mechanics, or do you bring people with you for that?
No, they have their own mechanics. They supply the karts, so it's all they sort the lot out really. Each team has 4 drivers in it. And there's between 25 and 40 karts at each race, so it's a full pack grid.
And is there a sense of camaraderie around the paddock, or is it right? We're racing for our team, and don't anybody see what we're up to, and don't anybody sort of give anybody an inch?
Not at all. Everyone helps everyone to an extent. But out on the track, it's a different story.
Well, yes, and we saw this with Formula Kart stars, where there are little tiny youngsters who are going round at Lord knows what speed. I mean, they weigh about 3 pounds each, and they go around these circuits at high speed. You guys are considerably bigger, rather heavier, but you've got 2 engines. I mean, what sort of speeds will your karts get up to when you're going around Wilton coming up at the next meeting, by the way?
We'll be going about 70 to 75 mile an hour. It's obviously not on the scale of things when you think of cars going about 200 mile an hour in Formula 1. It's not fast, but when you're like right off the ground and the corners are right next to each other, it feels ridiculously quick.
Are you conscious of speed when you're doing that? Because everyone's going the same speed, you just want to win. So are you conscious of anything going past you?
No, not really. You notice, like, obviously other drivers around you, like, you've got to be spatially aware of what's going on, but when you're going at whatever speed you're at, it feels the same when you're at the end of the straight or the start of the straight.
Now, EKL, as the Elite Karting League, has been on the box recently. In fact, from BBC Breakfast, I think our own Mike Bushell had a go, didn't he?
Yeah.
Were you involved in that in any way, shape or form?
No, we were asked to, but it was in a weekday, so it was quite hard to get to Teesside, 3.5 hour drive.
No kidding, and you've got day jobs to consider as well.
Exactly.
So, okay. Do you think he acquitted himself well? Did you see what happened?
I watched it. I think he's got a bit of room for improvement.
Spoken like a true critic in that case. Well, I mean, he's good on his feet. He's tried all sorts of sports in his time. Whether or not he has it in him to become a top quality racing driver, I suppose, remains to be seen. They do say that karting is where people cut their teeth. What would you say are the skills, perhaps for a parent who may now be thinking about doing the school run, who might think, yeah, absolutely, actually, I've got a child, male or female, who could have a go at this. From a junior perspective, maybe not with aspirations of getting into Formula 1, although we won't leave that out. What are the skills about being a kart driver that people need to consider if they want to go and have a go at this, beyond money?
The drivers, basically, you've got to have a fair amount of self-control, really, because when you're on the track, you've got to be patient. You can't just go out and try and overtake everyone in the first corner. So if you do, you just end up in a crash. So if you've got the patience and you can wait a little bit, then you'll generally pick off more places over the long run.
Alan Prost, they used to call the professor. He didn't go and try and win a race on the first corner. He used to pick them off one by one and take his time. You've got plenty of time within a race to do the same thing, James.
Yeah, of course.
All right, fine. Well, the racing is taking place at Wilton Mill. What happens if it's a bit wet? Did they give you wet tyres?
No.
It stays the same.
Carnage will ensue in that case. Wilton Mill is when it takes place. It's 12 sprint races. There's a race of champions. There's 2 1-hour endurance races as well. And if you want to see the Northampton Knights in action, then you can go along and see Luke and see James. Who else is driving for you this weekend?
We've got Ian Williams and Dan Underhill racing for us.
Ian, Dan, Luke and James in that case will be the Northampton Knights karting team. Backed for the very first time by their first sponsor, Northants Waste Control. So they'll be the fastest bin carts that you'll ever seen in your life. Are you going to be painting these things green or white or anything like that?
No, we've got some stickers for the NASU panels and for our visors. And for next year, we're looking for some suits.
So now, this makes you professional kart racers, isn't it? Because you've got sponsors. Professionals.
Want to be.
Professional attitude, off and on the track. And now, backing with support from Northamptonshire, which has got to be good news in terms of the future. We'll keep close to Luke and James and the rest of the team. Good luck to Ian, good luck to Dan, good luck to everybody taking part in EKL this weekend at Wilton Mill. If you want to go along, then you're very welcome to do so. If you'd like to find out more about the race series and perhaps fire the imagination of young ones for the future, then why not go and have a look at the website, www.thekartingleague.co.uk. There's also a Facebook page. You can find out all sorts of information about how the race series unfolds. eklnorthampton.co.uk is also a website that you can go and have a look at and find out more about the Northampton Knights. Good luck for the weekend, and shall we say 4th by next time we meet?
3rd.
I love a man who's a trier. Last 3, good luck to the guys from Northampton Karting. And the Northampton Knights have got their own Facebookers page. They want to get as many likes as they possibly can, not only for themselves, but also for the future and that sponsorship deal as well. The guys are doing well. Nice to have a good news story.